Benjamin Fulton French would now stand trial for contempt of court. This charge would include the bribing, intimidation, and threatening witnesses in the Hargis-Marcum trial and sending them beyond the jurisdiction of the court. Come along with us as we walk through the trial of B.F. French as retold by the newspaper articles of the day. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. Please do not attempt to remove the safety bar while the ride is in motion. But to get going, we still need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Charged with contempt of court. So, let's back up a moment here, shall we? As we found out yesterday, Judge Benton was not happy with the defendants of the Marcum Hargis case. There were many witnesses that were spirited away from the court so that they would not testify. We have found more information about what the charges were that B.F. French would face in his court hearing. According to the Adair County News, dated February 8, 1905, quote, Contempt of Court. Judge Benton issues orders of arrest for the Hargises and others. Winchester, Kentucky, February 1st. Judge Benton has issued orders for the arrest of James Hargis, Alex Hargis, Ed Callahan, and B.F. French, requiring them to execute bond for their appearance here on the first day of the April term of the court, charging them with contempt of court and bribing, intimidating, and threatening witnesses in the Hargis-Marcum trial, and sending them beyond the jurisdiction of the court. These witnesses were Mose Feltner, Buck Cottongang, Sam Fields, and others. 7 charges were made in all. B.F. French was arrested here on 2 charges and gave bond in $3,000. The others will be arrested at Jackson. Orders for the arrest of Mose Feltner and Sam Fields have also been ordered. It is said that Feltner has already been arrested in Leslie County on this charge, unquote. These were very serious charges levied against French. And as we have seen in the beginning of the story, French would have to stand alone in the answer to his charges, as the other men would take on their cases head on. Once again, to give this context, using the CPI inflation calculator, we will state that $3,000 in 1905 would be $105,142.16 in February 2024 currency. The arrest of French and others. Now this will be important as the trial of B.F. French takes place. Would you consider the action of Sheriff Woodson McCord and Jailer Boone to be out of line? Consider what the article states, according to the Bourbon News dated June 2, 1905. Quote, Behind the bars once more. Judge James Hargis and B.F. French were arrested at Winchester Wednesday by Sheriff Woodson McCord on a warrant sworn out by Mrs. Marcum before Police Judge F.P. Caldwell in Jackson, charging them in conjunction with Alex H. Hargis and Ed Callahan with the complicity in the murder of her husband, James Marcum. Alex H. Hargis learned of the warrants at his country home near Winchester and came in and surrendered to Sheriff McCord. Judge Hargis and B.F. French were taken by Jailer Boone, to whom they had been turned over, to the Court View Hotel for supper, as supper at the jail was over. The 3 spent the night in the Winchester jail. Callahan was arrested in Jackson, unquote. This event would be a bone of contention in the court. We could not find any statements or articles about Sheriff McCord mistreating those under his charge. In fact, we have come across many articles stating that he kept very well care of his prisoners, with some of them even staying in his own home. We also could not find any evidence that Sheriff McCord treated the Hargises and Callahan any differently than he did anyone else. So, it is a little confusing to us why this event would be brought up during the trial as a motion for McCord to leave the case. The trial begins. Hear ye, hear ye. The Circuit Court of Clark County in the city of Winchester, Kentucky is now in session. All rise as the Honorable Judge J. M. Benton enters the courtroom. All quotes in this section of the video will be according to the Hartford Republican, dated September 8, 1905. Quote, Hargis contempt case is called. The trial of French is begun. Hargis, Callahan, and Field demanded separate trial, which was granted. Winchester, Kentucky, September 4th. The calling today before the Circuit Judge J. M. Benton of the contempt cases against Alex Hargis, Judge James Hargis, B.F. French, Ed Callahan, Sam Fields, and Mose Feltner, charged with contempt of court and the alleged causing of several witnesses to leave the state during the trial of Mrs. James B. Marcum damage suit for the murder of her husband, resulted in the Commonwealth's electing to try French. When the court adjourned, 10 jurors have been accepted by both sides. Unquote. The jury has been selected, all of the witnesses will be accounted for, and the accused and his counsel are present. Quote, when the case in which French, Callahan, and Senator Hargis were jointly indicted was called, the Commonwealth answered ready, and the court adjourned until the afternoon to allow the defendants to consult. Alex H. Hargis promptly asked for a separate trial, which was granted. Unquote. Decisions had to be made on the defense side on how to proceed with these charges. The first of the defendants have asked for a separate trial concerning this matter. Alex Hargis would not be the last to leave this ship. It seems that they understood that even though they could receive different verdicts as a group, it was far too risky to appear together again. French and Callahan would file a motion for the judge to vacate the bench in their cases. Quote, when court met in the afternoon, French and Callahan filed an affidavit demanding that Judge Benton vacate the bench, and alleged as a reason, therefore, that he was and had been for a long time prejudiced against them, and that they did not believe they would get a fair and impartial trial at his hands. Judge Benton did not discuss the allegation of the affidavit, but promptly refused to vacate. Unquote. This was not really that unexpected. The men had faced Judge Benton in court before, and he was the one that levied the charges against them. The men felt that he already had in mind what fines and jail time that they would receive before the witnesses was called. They thought that Judge Benton would not hear their evidence to the contrary. But he was not the only one that they would make a motion to leave the case. Quote, an effort was also made by the defendants to prevent Sheriff McCord from exercising the functions of his office for the same alleged reasons. But Judge Benton also refused to require the sheriff to vacate. Unquote. So, the defendants also felt that Sheriff McCord was not fair in his handling of the men in this case, that he was set against them because they had a previous case that they had lost in the court. But again, as previously discussed, we could find no evidence of this happening. Because of Judge Benton's ruling, Callahan would drop out of the case. Quote, at this point, Callahan asked for a separate trial, which was granted. Of the 3 defendants, the prosecution elected to try B.F. French. Unquote. Why was B.F. French the first to be chosen to go to trial? Was this because there was more evidence to prove that he was guilty of these charges? That if you followed the money, B.F. French was the man who paid the bribe to Felix Feltner to give to Moses Feltner. Felix Feltner had already stood trial, and French was looking at the same exact fines and jail time. Quote, the trial of Felix Feltner last spring resulted in the fine of $3,000 and imprisonment in jail at hard labor for 2 years. Unquote. Something to keep in mind, all witness statements from the Marcum, Breathitt, and Feltner trials will also be used in this trial. It was a fast trial, as only the pertinent testimonies from the witnesses concerning the spiriting away of Feltner and others would be used. Judge Hargis testifies. We do have a record of one testimony in this case coming from Judge Hargis himself. He would testify against the advice of his counsel, as he was also facing trial of his own for the same charges. According to the Daily Public Ledger, dated September 8, 1905, quote, Judge James Hargis, in the case of B.F. French, charged with enticing Mose Feltner and other witnesses out of the state in the damage suit of Mrs. James B. Marcum for the murder of her husband, testified at Winchester that $1,500 given to Feltner was only a loan. Judge Hargis put on the stand over the objection of his counsel, unquote. Once again, to give this context, we will use the CPI inflation calculator to state that in 1905, $1,500 in February 2024 currency would be $52,571.08. Was it really a loan or a bribe? And why would the money be exchanged between the witnesses during the trial if it was only a loan? Was this, wink wink, loan so that Feltner could get out of testifying in the case? There were too many witnesses that stated that French and Callahan went to the residence of Feltner to ask for his assistance. Feltner did not seek them out. In next week's video, we will walk through the verdict and the decision from the Kentucky Appellate Court. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.